Well, welcome everybody. My name is Quentin Wadden. I'm a Rotarian from Washington, D.C. And Spencer asked me for 2 or 3 minutes to introduce this webinar. The brains behind the webinar are going to be the speaker, and Spencer did all the organization. Somebody is actually talking, and you might want to mute yourself. The title is Amphibious Housing for Vulnerable Communities, and we are going to learn about innovative programs to try to help people who are victims of floods in Bangladesh and in Vietnam try to cope and how to protect housing. The webinar is co-sponsored by the Rotary Peace Fellowship Association, the Rotary Club of Washington Global, the Fellowship for Global Development, the RAG on Refugees, and importantly, the Global Resilience Partnership. And I'll just say one more word. A few years ago, I did a study for the World Bank on South Asia on how people were affected by floods. And one of the conclusions that we had from that study is that it was actually very difficult for the most poor people who were affected by flood to leave, to migrate. This is not directly about this, but it really tries to solve a very complex issue. So without additional taking time, Spencer, the floor is back to you for the host of the event.
The rundown of the event will be, we have Douglas and Andrew here facilitating the whole event. What we shall do is we're going to start the event with the documentary films. And after that, we have panelists in discussion on this area. And together at this event, we have the CEO of the Global Resilience Partnership, Nate, here as well. We have a person, Elizabeth, Douglas, and Nathan, and Tang in here. I mean, they're all expert in this area. So please feel free to put any questions you want to raise on the chat, and maybe we can address it after the panel discussions. On this note in here, shall I pass the floor to Douglas?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Douglas Varshall. I'm the I guess you would call the resident filmmaker for this for these guys that were Elizabeth and Nandan for these wonderful projects of theirs. And what you're going to see is we've got a 16-minute piece that we shot about 2 years ago. And we're going to sort of show that up first, and then Elizabeth and Nandan will explain where their projects are today. And at this point, I want to bring in Andy. Andy, why don't you, Andy and I are co-hosting. Andy, are you there? Andy Stone.
Yes, I am, Douglas.
Rotarian. Okay. Hi.
I'm a Rotary Peace Fellow. Thank you.
Okay, great. Andy is a Rotary Peace Fellow. So at this point, is there anything that you want to say, Andy, about the Rotary Peace Fellow and how this whole project of these two projects sort of relate to the work that you're doing? Like a minute, 2 minutes.
Certainly.
Why is this important for you?
Yeah. As Rotary Peace Fellows, we come together from a wide range of sectors and disciplines, and my work as a Peace Fellow is in the Mekong River Basin, about 50% of it. So I'm aware of the issues with the Mekong Delta, and with changes in climate, and also changes in the upper river in recent years with large hydropower dam projects and other types of development in the upper basin. There's going to be some dramatic changes to the Delta in the next 50 to 100 years. That's affecting somewhere between 15 and 20 million people and the majority of the agricultural production of Vietnam. So it's a very timely and relevant issue where you're almost next door to Myanmar, which is currently undergoing some political strife, I guess we could say. And you're also adjacent to the South China Sea. So it's really at the center of a lot of geopolitical issues that we're going to be seeing in the next couple of decades.
Okay, great. Well, I think at this point, let's bring on the CEO of Global Resilience Partnership, and that's Nate Matthews. And he basically is the Nate's organization was the funding organization for these two projects. So Nate, why don't you explain GRP and why you chose these two projects to get funding?
Sure, thanks, Doug, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm really excited to hear more and from these projects and some updates from everyone. So just a very brief introduction. Global Resilience Partnership, we're a partnership of over 60 public and private organizations working on building resilience in low and middle income countries. We work across 4 interlinked areas, and they're usefully defined as innovate, share, convene, and advance. And the work in our innovation sphere is the work that we funded under this project. And that really is focused on how we surface innovation on the ground. And as you know, when you're searching for innovation, you have to take risks to get to innovation. And when you take risks, you have to really have an adaptive learning approach and really embrace the idea that failure is a possibility. When we supported these projects, they were supported through a $10 million investment from Zurich Insurance that was looking at building flood resilience in low and middle income countries. And this was about 4 years ago now. And we supported the projects along with a sort of a wider ecosystem of support. And we selected these projects also because they weren't looking, although the title of this project is really about amphibious housing, to identify these projects as just a singular solution on amphibious housing would be a misrepresentation of the projects, because they also came with their own engagement, a long and deep engagement with communities, background work, working with a wider ecosystem of support, and links up to policy influence and capacity development. And I think that's really important to think about when we think about resilience projects, because resilience for us is really about how to find ways to thrive in the face of uncertainty and be transformative in the face of uncertainty, and find these sort of novel ways of managing our livelihoods, novel ways of stewarding our ecosystems. And these projects were exceptionally innovative. They have lots of adaptive learning from this. So I won't add on much more there. I would just add just another couple words on flooding to complement what Andy was saying, and as well what Quentin was saying. So flooding as a topic is really critical at the moment. So by 2030, an additional 800 million people will be at risk of coastal flooding. And it's also really important to recognize that flooding is not gender neutral. So women are most adversely impacted both during floods and after floods. And of course, vulnerable groups are much more significantly impacted by flooding than others. Those are really important topics that Elizabeth and Nandan are addressing, and in really challenging contexts as well. So it's great to see these innovations from these projects being showcased, and I really look forward to hearing the updates. Elizabeth, Professor English, I should say, is a professor at the University of Waterloo, who is originally from Louisiana. Elizabeth, is that where you're originally from? I think so.
Unmute yourself, Elizabeth.
Yes, I'm trying to. I'm actually originally from New Jersey, but I've been in Louisiana for 21 years, and I've been teaching at the University of Waterloo in Canada for 14 years.
Right, but it's fantastic. Thanks, Elizabeth. And it's really that experience, living in Louisiana and really seeing the power and devastating, destructive force of floods firsthand that brought you into this. And I know you were originally looking at wind, I think originally, and then you moved on to look at how flooding impacts houses and things like that. So you can tell that story as you get into your talk. But as I said, that should be enough of an introduction, and really excited to hear from you. And we also have Lu Thiang and Lu, you have to help me out here a bit with your organization.
Thang, can you explain who you're with and unmute yourself? Go ahead.
Hello, thank you so much. So I am working as a researcher for Center of Water Management and Climate Change at Vietnam National University. So I have been working in this organization for about 3 years and mostly based on the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. My research interests are on water governance, livelihood transformation, and climate change adaptation. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Back over to you, Doug.
Spencer, at this point, let's show a 16-minute film that looks at, it's a documentary of these two projects in the context of GRP. Can you roll? Okay, thank you.
Flooding is essential for the ecosystem health of a delta. Although traditional delta homes are usually raised above the ground, climate change projections suggest the world's deltas will be prone to increasingly severe floods in the future. With support from the Z Zurich Foundation, the Global Resilience Partnership Water Window Challenge awarded 12 grants to find innovative solutions to building sustainable flood resilience in challenging environments. This film follows two of the GRP Water Window grantees, one in Vietnam and one in Bangladesh, working to retrofit and build low-cost, floating homes for marginalized people in flood-prone areas. The major new design element includes adding a buoyancy component to the house so that it floats during a flood, allowing the occupants to persist, adapt, and transform in the face of flooding instead of moving away. The data from the pilot projects will be used to scale up and form sustainable business models for propagating the housing design and overall adaptation strategy throughout the region and beyond.
Mình cứ nói cái gì cũng được nhưng mà đến cái từ cuối cùng là Amphibious là mình nói to lên là được. Nên mọi người nói theo con cái từ Amphibious nha. 2, 4, 6, 8, we should all Amphibious. 2, 3.
2, 4, 6, 8, we should all amphibiate.
The Mekong Delta is home to over 17 million people, most of whom are rice and fish farmers. It's composed largely of wetlands, and its annual flood season is now under threat from climate change, sea level rise, and changes to the Mekong River from upstream hydropower, which will likely cause greater disruption for Delta communities in the future.
Resilience for me means helping a community prepare in advance for a hazardous event so that it doesn't become a disaster. And if there is damage or hardship, they can recover much more quickly and resume their normal lives. I'm interested in reducing trauma, in reducing displacement, because I saw so much of that after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, and it was personally very upsetting for me.
Elizabeth and her team are here to collaborate with Vietnamese partners to develop techniques for retrofitting houses so they are better able to survive the anticipated extreme floods and rains of the future.
Theo cái đề án nhà nổi có thể làm cho người dân an tâm hơn. Thì hơn nữa là người dân khi có lũ về, người dân cùng sống chung với lũ. Người dân cùng sống chung với lũ. Tại vì khi sống chung với lũ thì có thể kinh tế tạo ra trong mùa lũ cho người dân.
Transformation in the face of extreme flooding is key to building resilience. By turning traditional Delta homes into clever amphibious creatures, people can go beyond just coping to actively shaping change.
This is a typical Vietnamese house. We retrofitted it to become amphibious. When the flood comes, it will lift up off the ground, buoyed up by these empty recycled jugs, and the rope will slide up on the vertical guidance post, and it'll stay on top of the water. As the flood goes away, it will come back down, and end up in exactly the same position as when it took off.
To help with the retrofits, Elizabeth collaborated with a local master carpenter.
Cũng lần đầu tiên mình mới từng làm một cái nhà nổi như thế này, thế ra mình cũng chưa có rõ là cái quy cách để mình làm, cho nên gặp nhiều là khó khăn, cho nên là mình với cùng cô là có một cái ý thức, một cái giải pháp để tìm ra một cái cuối cùng cũng là được đây đi đến một cái thành công quyết định.
There were many challenges the team faced, including developing a centering device that ensures the house comes down in the same position it started after the water recedes, and coming up with a guidepost system that keeps the house from floating away.
So what we're doing here is merging latest scientific approaches and methods of calculation with the traditional way of making houses and coming up with a synthesis that respects the local culture but is calculated to make sure that what we're doing is safe and well engineered by modern standards.
One customer is very satisfied with the result of their amphibiated retrofit.
Tổng nghĩ thì thấy cũng vui, như Hài dùng chủng của tứ giác Long Xuyên này, nước thì năm gì năm khác, nhằm năm thì nước cũng nhiều lắm, như lũ năm 2011 là lên đạt khoảng 1,9 m, tính từ mặt ruộng đi lên là cao hơn bờ kênh. Còn như cái nhà mới này thì nước lũ nó sẽ nổi lên thì cuộc sống của mình nó sẽ.
During the past 12 months, 4 Delta homes were amphibiated. As each house was structurally unique, the team was able to experiment with the basic components of the retrofit, trying out new designs. Sensors were also installed to monitor tilt, roll, and wind speed.
Now we need to wait for the floods to come so that we can show how well they perform, or find that they don't perform as well as we were hoping and make changes to the design.
Cũng là mới mẻ, mấy lần đầu tiên mình thấy vậy là cũng rất là hài lòng. Và có thể là sau này mình có bằng thêm, có thể mình rút ra nhiều cái kỹ thuật khác hơn, có thể là chắc chắn hơn nữa.
The local government is also pleased, though how the houses behave when water is added is a key point for them.
Thì nếu những năm tới lũ về thì có thể là xem lại cái mô hình nhà này, người dân sống trong cái ngôi nhà này thì như thế nào, thì lúc đó cái hiệu quả ra sao, thì lúc đó địa phương sẽ xin ý kiến của ủy ban huyện, thì lúc đó mới mở rộng ra được.
The beauty of an amphibiated house is that it targets the roots of the problem of living with floods, not by building dams or dikes, but by providing a solution that allows people to thrive within the uncertainty of climate change.
People are now thinking that this is something that can really happen, and it's something that can benefit the community. If we can teach the people to do this themselves, then there's no limit to the number of people who can benefit. 2, 4, 6, 8. We should all amphibiate.
Just some quick rules. We're going to give Elizabeth and Nandan about 5-6 minutes each to sort of bring us up to date where they are with their projects. And we will be asking them questions. It'll be Nate, Andy, and Quentin, plus myself, will be asking questions.
It was the beginning
and maybe a little more.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Can everyone hear me? It was the beginning.
Go ahead.
It was the beginning of July in 2018 when Douglas came and made this film with us. And the monsoon season starts, well, it's just starting. The rainy season is just starting then, but the floods usually come between September and November. And so sure enough, luckily for us, for our documentation, there was a major flood in 2018, and all 4 of the houses floated, and I had an opportunity to go back the beginning of October to see them and document them. And then in November, I was entering an international design competition with the Vietnam project in which we won 3rd place. And so this is a little 3-minute film that my students and I made for that design competition. And you'll see a little bit of repetition because Douglas and I shared material here, but let me show this to you now.
Elizabeth, before you get going, let me just point out to everybody that there's some wonderful drone footage here that actually really sort of shows these houses in situ. So go ahead.
Okay.
Show the film, show the stuff.
Yes. So here we go. Sharing screen. Okay. Here we go.
This project has been a collaboration between our Canadian and Vietnamese partners. It transfers an innovative flood risk reduction and climate change adaptation technology developed in North America for application in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. In September 2018, the Mekong Delta's seasonal flood returned into the rice fields. Along with the rising water levels, 4 houses put to the test a low-cost system for increasing community resilience and successfully adapted to the flooding. Vietnam's Mekong Delta is home to 17 million people. The delta is comprised largely of wetlands and is considered the rice bowl of Southeast Asia. Traditionally, houses in the region are raised above ground to mitigate property damage during flooding events. Due to the combination of climate change, weather events, and upstream dam constructions, the current level of static elevation of these houses is no longer adequate to protect residents and their property from flood damage. Low-cost, amphibious retrofits to the existing houses can provide a solution to these vulnerable populations. In order to preserve residents' connection to their land and livelihoods, a passive climate change adaptation and flood mitigation technique can be implemented, allowing the agricultural land in the delta to benefit from the seasonal flooding without endangering residents or inflicting property damage. The project sites are located in the An Giang province and the Long An province. The first site in An Giang province is located in the floating rice conservation area. It is home to many farmers and diverse ecologies. Our experiences in the An Giang province allowed us to develop our collaborative process. Design details were developed with models and working drawings in Canada and were merged with local techniques on site during construction. Materials were chosen based on suggestions and consultations with carpenters, homeowners, and local researchers and experts with an emphasis on using recycled materials. Variations of systems were developed on both sites in order to test different approaches of amphibious retrofits. The second site is in Long Sen Wetland Reserve in Long An province. Our work there followed the retrofits in An Giang province by a few weeks, allowing us to learn from that experience and incorporate improvements into the later retrofits. We were careful to maintain contact with homeowners before, during, and after the retrofit to monitor their experiences and satisfaction with the performance of their retrofitted house. Amphibious homes allow people to adapt gradually to inevitable changes in lifestyle and to avoid displacement and trauma as a result of sudden, unexpected disastrous events due to worsened flooding from climate change. We aim to expand our scope by teaching local populations how to implement this technology themselves using affordable, locally available materials. We will have succeeded in this goal when the communities we serve can carry on independently without our help. This project builds on the work of the Buoyant Foundation Project at the University of Waterloo and is supported by a generous grant from the Global Resilience Partnership and the Z Zurich Foundation.
Okay, I'm going to stop here for just a second because that prepared video is finished, and going to go show a little bit more of the flooding footage, drone footage, and some other videos of the 4 houses when they're flooded. So this is just a little bit more showing how they managed. So this is moving over. You can see the extent of the flooding, And we're moving over. In the lower left corner is the house belonging to Now. So we're showing Nao's house first. So here it is floating, and we have about 1.5 meters of water here. And then close by is Nao's younger brother, Lac's house. This is Lac's house. And there's Lac sitting in the hammock on his front porch. And you can see the sleeves. This is a different type of sleeve. We used rope on Nang's house and Nao's house, and boxes on Lac's house. And now we've gone to Long Am province. And this is the house that was mostly thatch when we retrofitted it, but the owners upgraded it. And this is Nang's house. And there is a monkey bridge. Those are the barrels that are used for buoyancy. And this is a monkey bridge on top of the path. So here you can see we used the box type of sleeves again. So the existing path is underwater. So the villagers built a monkey bridge. And here's some of the local children playing in the water. And this is the end of my video. Yeah, I'll wait for some questions.
This project has been a collaboration between our...
Let me stop sharing.
Okay. Okay, Quentin, Andy, why don't you, Quentin, do you have any questions for Elizabeth? And then Andy. Hello, Quentin, are you there?
No, Quentin has left for the vaccine. Oh.
Ah, okay, okay. Quentin had to go off and get his vaccination, which is great. Andy, are you around?
I am here. Yeah, what I'm seeing in the chat window are questions about cost, specifically for the Vietnamese example, and then also questions about what about human waste during the flood season.
Okay, those are both excellent questions. These 4 prototypes in Vietnam were the first time that I had tried to build these, except as a university prototype project on a much reduced scale. So it was much more expensive than it would be when we have economy of scale and we have a trained crew. No one had ever done this before. We had to pay a lot for materials because we ordered them at the last minute and then had to pay for transportation. So each of these houses cost about $2,400 to retrofit. But when we have the homeowners and their neighbors providing the labor, and they can collect the materials over time and not have to pay a lot for transportation, then we believe that the cost and we've had more time to do some training there. We believe the cost can come down to about $800 per house. Most of that is for the buoyancy elements, the barrels or the jugs. And my goal would be to show people that they can actually take plastic water bottles, put the caps back on, bundle them together and use those for the buoyancy elements. And then the buoyancy elements would be essentially free, and that would bring the cost down even more. Sanitary question. None of these houses had sanitary facilities within the house. There was either a communal bathroom for the for the residents, or they used the traditional Vietnamese waste disposal. So we did not attempt to make an improvement there because that's another whole project. But I am working with some people who are developing that sort of thing. And I'm hoping that in scaling up, we would be able to introduce some ways of dealing with human waste.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Andy. Go ahead. Andy, you had some questions for Tang, and let's get Tang's point of view in here as she is a local, more or less. Andy, are you around? Hello?
Yes. Yes. Well, okay. I thought it was very interesting what Nanan was saying, speaking about these things from a whole systems perspective. And so this is my question for our experts from or working in Vietnam. Projections for the Mekong Delta between 2050 and 2100 are that a majority of that land area could be permanently flooded by a combination of sea level rise and land subsidence from a number of causes. And so that means that not only do they need housing, they're going to have to transform their livelihoods, what they're growing. The water will be saltier. There could be permanent flooding happening. Nandan mentioned the education system, fresh water, food sources are going to change. And then there's also the issue of human waste disposal and then household and what you might call municipal waste, other types of waste management. And so I guess I'm curious how that might be addressed or how that's being thought about in the projects in Vietnam to deal with those situations that are likely to occur within, 2050 is 30 years away. How are these projects going to apply to that level of change that's anticipated in the next 30 to 70 years?
Tang, would you like to start and then I'll add something?
Thank you so much, Andy, for the question. So you are very right that the situation in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam is getting more and more complicated, and there are a lot of uncertainties that we are not sure how to deal with in the future. So all of the issues that you have just listed, like salinization, subsidence, land subsidence, and more extremes will be probably happening in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, and that is a really, very complicated situation and wicked issues that many people, the local government experts and local communities are trying to deal with here in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. So, okay, so to answer the question how the amphibious housing model could help Vietnam to deal with this complicated situation in the future. One characteristic of the flooding in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam is the flood is calm and prolonged, and so it comes slowly and then withdraws slowly. So this characteristics is very suitable for the type of amphibious housing design that have been applying in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. So that is the first thing that for me to think that the amphibious housing model is very suitable for the flooding characteristics in the condition of the Vietnamese Mekong Delta. Secondly, the Vietnamese government has recognized the uncertainties, the complicated situations in the Vietnamese Mekong Delta, especially given the climate change and sea level rise in the future. So the government is steering the Delta in a more sustainable development direction in the future. It means that we are trying to adapt to the nature, to live with flood. So the amphibious housing design, I think, is in line with the direction of the local government for a sustainable development of the Mekong Delta in the future. Yeah, so is that answers the question? Maybe Elizabeth, if you could add something.
Yeah. I'd like to add another couple of points. With respect to the short window between now and when we might start seeing the Mekong Delta go underwater. In the first place, if your house is amphibious, then you don't lose everything when there's a flood. So a flood comes and your house goes up, and even if you evacuate, you can move right back in afterwards without any damage to your possessions. So this gives people a lot more flexibility. They don't move because they've been wiped out. They move because they've gotten to the point where it's no longer convenient enough, or they're no longer able to produce a livelihood. But these people are incredibly ingenious. They already multi-crop in the floating rice district. And when the fields are flooded, they all become fishermen. So they fish when the water's there. In some parts of Vietnam, they triple crop, and that's not what we're talking about here because that degrades the land. But the amphibious houses would be part of a system that respected the land, respected the water, and allowed the farmers to continue to do crop rotations and develop new produce new crops that as the climate changes, more salt resistant varieties of rice and the other crops that they grow. But they're already rotating crops in An Giang. Yeah, and the other thing is that the people learn how to do this themselves. There was another question about cost, if you don't mind my answering that here. But when they're able to control the purchasing of materials, when they're able to provide the labor, then all they need to pay for is the time of the master carpenter and what's left of the materials that they need to buy. I say what's left because they can make the buoyancy elements themselves from plastic water bottles that they don't have to pay for. And the other thing is that we were talking with the government, the local government, about developing plans for them to subsidize the purchase of materials or work with local businesses to create subsidies so that people could buy the materials at much lower cost. And honestly, I think the national government, when they see how this increases the resilience of the people and how invested in this the people are themselves, because it's a retrofit to their own house. So they already have a stake in maintaining it and making sure that they're checking it all the time. And anyway, I'll stop there.
Elizabeth, let me jump in here. I'm very curious. Did the people really sort of like what you did for them? I mean, were they happy with, their house went up and the whole thing floated and they were fine with this and loved it, I gather.
They were ecstatic. We were there in October and when it was flooding, and they were delighted with it. And then I also made a trip back in January after the flood with Tang, and we interviewed the owners and asked them about their experience, and they loved it. They said, "This is so fantastic. We're not afraid of the flood anymore."
Okay. And what did the local officials think? Because when we went and we talked to them, it was very clear they were keeping an eye on you. And is this, are these people crazy? Will this work? Can we get this to, is this something we want to do? So
I'm
quickly.
not unaccustomed to being characterized as crazy for being so engaged in this project, but they were very skeptical when we were there in May, June, July of 2018. But then the floods came and the houses all worked beautifully. And the government officials came, they were delighted. I had quite a few meetings when I went back in January, and they wanted to keep this going. They wanted to perpetuate it and be a part of it. But I ran out of funding, and unfortunately, I've transferred a lot of knowledge to a master carpenter, but not enough yet for him to work on this himself. And there's some tricky things having to do with buoyant stability that I need to I need to give them better guidelines so that they can do it themselves.
Okay, I'm sorry, but we're sort of running out of time, and we want to get to Nandan and hear all about his wonderful project. My last question would be for Tang. Tang, are you there? From a Vietnamese point of view, what do you think of this whole thing of retrofitting the houses and they float? Do you think this is something you can sell to everybody? Tang? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, okay, yeah. So what do you think?
I think the model is very suitable for the situation of the Vietnamese Mekong Delta, and especially for the low-income communities, because as Elizabeth already explained, we can use recycled materials and also the materials that we can find in the local areas. So that the cost of the houses will be affordable for the local communities. And secondly, so you know, the local carpenters, they learn the techniques from Elizabeth and the group, so that it can be a new livelihood for these carpenters to further develop, and then to train for the new carpenters in the Mekong Delta to develop. And I would like to...
Okay, and Nate, I was also thinking, why don't you ask that very interesting question about of yours about standalone solutions are often not effective against the dynamic challenges of climate change, and see whether Elizabeth and Nandan could answer that. But let me ask, Andy, do you have any questions to ask Nandan?
That would be my question, the one that you just asked Nate to ask. So I think we'll let him ask it.
Okay, well, why don't you read that question? I mean, did you get a copy of that? Okay.
I mean, I don't have the exact question in front of me, but I might be able to just to wing it based off of the fact that I wrote it before. So, but I mean, I think just, you know, when you have these challenges of climate change, they're obviously linked across a number of other factors. So it's not just the floods that are the challenge here. It's the interlinked risks, and almost an architecture of risks that connects these events and these pressures that people are facing, especially vulnerable or people that are vulnerable to shocks and stresses. So it'd be great to see, you know, how you've dealt with those, and really, as I said in my intro, looked at this as beyond just a simple, you know, a technological solution to a much more sort of approach that you do to address the challenges of climate change.
Go ahead.
All right, so I completely agree that interventions can't be just on their own. They need to fit into a system. They need to, somebody, when you put them on the ground, somebody needs to own them and care about them and keep them going. And so retrofitting a small house that belongs to a family, in the first place, we have the owners who have bought into this. And when they are more engaged in the actual building and they're contributing the labor, they will be even more bought in than they were for this demo project. But the intervention is small and can happen in many different places. It's inexpensive, and we have ways of, it's too expensive now, but we have ways of bringing the cost down. The government has expressed interest in getting involved in this, but it just, it needs a little more field work on my part to be there to help push this forward and make it happen, and also do more training for the carpenters. And the other thing is that we had the opportunity to work in Vietnam, and that was fabulous. And I definitely want to go back to Vietnam and scale this up there, but it could also work in Bangladesh, it could work in India, it could work in Cambodia, it could work in Thailand. So there are many, many places where this could be applied, and at the scale and cost that it is, I think it's very broadly applicable.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I want to see whether Tang could give us some thoughts on Nate's question. Tang, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Please share with us your thinking.
Yes, so when listening to Nandan and Elizabeth, I think about the flooding series happened in the center of Vietnam last year, which caused hundreds of people died, and many billions and many schools were damaged. And so the flooding series happened suddenly, and lots of people were put in passive situations where they didn't expect the flood was so big in the magnitude like that. So I was thinking, if we have some sort of like the amphibious houses for the local people there, then those houses could save a lot of lives and property for local people. So I think in the condition of uncertainty happening in many countries in over the world, especially for vulnerable communities, one suitable and affordable model like the housing amphibious, like the amphibious houses, could should be expanded and yeah, to apply more, to develop more in over the world.
Okay, thank you, Tang.
Thank you.
Spencer, I guess I can turn things back to you, but we have about 4 or 5 minutes. Shall we open this up to the, if anybody is interested in asking our panel or anybody a question? Shall we do that, Spencer?
Yes, no, thank you, Doug. Let me first thank you know, all the facilitators and GRPs and Nate, and in supporting this event, all the Rotarian participants in here. I think this is a very important topic we need to address, because we all know that peace is not just the absence of war. The attending the events at the GRPs has shown us that the climate changes is real, you know, and that we need to find innovative solutions to address the resilience. And together with the Rotarians community, I think we can bring some solutions into the pictures. Maybe what we can do is that we still have a few minutes in here. If there is any burning comments or questions from the floor, from Rotarians, from the groups, please feel free to raise their hand or actually to comment. Yeah. Another thing that I come across is, I mean, these things is not only happening in the developing world. We have, you know, United States, Louisiana, everywhere. It's happening around the world. So, yeah, feel free if you have any comments.
Andy, do you have any comments? One final comment, one final.
Sure. What's coming to my mind as a peace fellow, as a peace builder, and being educated as a systems ecologist, for those of us living in wealthier countries or in areas that are not particularly prone to flooding or sea level rise. I guess I'd like to remind us that part of the importance of this, whether they're 100% effective for everyone or 50% effective, it doesn't matter. It's providing a cushion to the changes that are going to happen. So communities will adapt to the extent that they can, typically. And when the rate of change exceeds the rate of their ability to adapt, that's where we have problems. We look at the conflict in Syria, for example. If we dig down into the root of that, there's quite a deep and broad root in water issues behind that conflict. So in the case in Southeast Asia, we have maybe an overabundance of water in some cases, and increasing people's ability to spread out the impact of the change in water availability over space and time adds to the stability of that region. So I think this is quite important work, and we can debate whether it's a solution or a temporary mitigation or how long it's going to be useful and what else needs to happen at the same time. It's still an important component of that, and it's important for us to keep in mind that there are other things that are going to need to happen as well, and pay attention to the whole situation, I think, as people that can affect policy or affect funding and whatnot, to keep our eye on the whole picture. That would be my comment.
Okay, any response to that? I'm reading my Facebook.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, I will. I think there's an interesting aspect of the time scale here. There's, sort of the immediate solution and there's the long-term solution, and they're not necessarily the same thing. I know that in North America now, both in the United States and in Canada, they are promoting managed retreat, which means people are required to move away when their home has been damaged in a flood, or else it's just they make it so expensive that you can't stay. So people are disenfranchised and have to move. We can't do that in Southeast Asia. There's too many people. And so a temporary solution that saves these people from loss and trauma and forced displacement, or pushes them into migration, allows them to stay until they're ready to leave. That's what I think we need. I said at the beginning that what got me into this is because I was so horrified by the trauma that I witnessed in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, because I was doing a lot of work there after Katrina. And, it was completely unnecessary. People don't have to suffer in that way. We have ways of protecting people, even if it's just temporarily. But if it's inexpensive and it gives people the opportunity to stay where they are and then have the choice of moving when they can no longer sustain themselves, when they're ready to go. And that level of efficacy, of agency in their own lives is really, really important to me.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Well, we're over time. So Spencer, what do you?
Yes, thank you, Doug.
I leave it in your capable hands.
Thank you, thank you. Let me again thank you, Nate, the Global Resilience Partnerships, for sponsoring, supporting this event. And thank you, Elizabeth and Nathan, for sharing your experience, as well as Tang, your local experience in the Vietnams in here. And thank you, Andrews and Doug, to moderating and facilitating these events. The Rotary Peace Fellowships Alumni Associations is a group of people that focus on peace buildings, and together the Rotarians community would like to work together in addressing these very, very important issues. Again, let me draw you the attention of that. The association is will be hosting the Global Peace Conference in coming June, in mid-June, and we'll bring in other topics in addition with environments, gender equalities, and different topics in here. And we're encouraging the Rotarians or the participants here to join us and share your thoughts. And hopefully we can find solution working together collaboratively in finding a possible solutions for mankind. Again, thank you very much for attending the event. And I look forward to seeing all you in the future in the event. Recording will be shared through emails when they are available on the website. Thank you, and have a great evening, or have a great day, and a great weekend.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank everybody. Thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Thank
weekend.
you. Thank you, Tang. I'm so glad you can make it. Great. Elizabeth.
Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed the
Thank
questions.
you.
I've put quite a bit in the chat. So take a look at that.
Okay. Thanks a lot now. We'll continue this discussion.
Please, yes, let's do that. Let's do that.